Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Is it on? Are you, I'm looking to see if people are coming in. Oh, there it is. Okay, it is. It's opened up now. There, I see it. Thanks. Okay. People are joining. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Okay.
Welcome.
We'll wait and give people a little bit of time to get settled. And tell me, everybody, I'm really happy that you're here, and just let us know where you're from and how old your kids are. It's always helpful to know really how old the kids are, but also I always like to know where everybody's from. So just, you can put it in the chat box if you would. That would be great. Just stick it in the chat box and let us know. We'll get started in just a few minutes. We're going to talk about coding tonight. You're going to learn all about it. I'm going to learn all about it. All right. Let's give people just a little time. Okay. Okay, everyone. All right. Well, let's go ahead and kind of get things started. We'll just get the ball rolling. Oh, there you are. Oh, somebody's got 3 kids. Oh, yeah, perfect ages too for some of the things we're talking about. Thank you, Louisiana, Washington. Where else is everybody from? Let us know. It's great. It's very helpful. And I assume your kids are really into coding and gaming and some of the things we're going to be talking about today. So, all right. Okay, well, let me go ahead. I think I'm going to go ahead and introduce introduce Devon, who is one of our teachers in coding, who's already educated me quite a bit about it. A lot more than I knew before. And Moise is here as well tonight. He's helping us get things kind of rolling. So welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here. And we're just going to kind of just get started. So if you have questions, and I hope you do, just if you'll open up your Q&A box and just write your questions in the Q&A box, that would be very helpful. Just put them in there, and then in the chat box, just let us know how old your kids are, where you're from. It's always nice to know where everybody's from and how many kids they have and what ages they are. So Devon, thank you for being here with us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah. Well, I learned so much when we were kind of discussing this ahead of time because, coding and programming is new to me. I mean, I know a little bit about it, but a very little bit. So we thought it might be kind of helpful to talk about it. Let parents ask questions if they have questions about it. And just to open the door for those people who are really beginners, can you just talk about what we mean when we talk about coding? Because I know our kids, love to play computer games. They love to be online. And where does coding fit into all of that?
So coding it's the process in which we communicate with our computers. So when we open up, say, an application, every single task that we're going to be performing on said application needs to be handcrafted by a programmer. So things like Notepad, things like Netflix, code is that commanding factor behind it all.
Okay. And do you have, and if you have slides, because I know you made a couple of slides, if you want to show any slides about any of these, feel free to let me know that you have a slide you want to show about it.
Sure.
Yeah. So anyway, Okay, so when we talk about coding, are we talking about all those X's and O's and is that what is that it or is it different?
So when maybe not X and O's, but when we see ones and zeros, that is binary code, and binary code was what is referred to as machine code, and machine code is kind of like the baseline, what everything started out as, and then as time went on, we had these fantastic programmers who understood that we as humans we're not that great at communicating in entirely ones and zeros. We need a an actual language to sort of represent how we want things to go down. And so they invented the first language, which is kind of like assembly language. And then off of that, people started inventing these higher level languages, which will convert down into assembly language. And so that's what you have nowadays. You have languages like Python, like Java, like C++. Those languages convert themselves down into assembly language. And that is what companies are really looking for in programmers.
I see. And when you say assembly language, what do you mean by that?
Assembly language is just another form of like it's the higher level. When we compile our code, when we go and code a script and we go to compile it, it converts itself down into assembly language. And then from there on, that itself converts itself down into machine code. Assembly language is just kind of the next step in compilation. And so it's just another way of saying it's another complicated code that was too complicated for people to, reasonably code in, because it just required thousands of lines of code to get the simplest things done. And so people compiled it, upgraded it into these higher level languages that we see today.
Got it. Okay. Ooh, gosh. Okay. So tell me about, well, first of all, what got you into coding in general? How did you even get into this? Because this is your area of expertise.
So it's the funniest thing that got me into coding. So my mom, she was in IT. She does so much business with computers. And growing up, I was a little gamer, right? I played video games every single day. We used to play on the N64. For those of us that know what that is, that was back when in the early 2000s where they released like Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, and we used to play all those games. And I used to get distracted by those games. I used to go to school and not pay attention to education, and I would just draw on my notepads and come home with all these designs for these new games. And my mom saw that, and she thought, not to say that she weaponized it against me, but she totally took that concept like, oh, he's interested in design, right? Well, what's a great way of introducing kids who are interested in design and a passion for video games? How about video game design, which includes having to know these concepts like programming? And so that led me straight into C++, which then sort of spiraled into me knowing all of these different languages because it's so interesting.
So it was just your curiosity and your passion for games that led you into becoming a coder and learning all of this.
It really was, and that and my mom being just a genius on her part and knowing exactly what to do in that situation led me right into, say, taking tutoring classes on my own, and then getting interested in going and buying programming books just so I could know more about coding, because it's such an interesting thing. It gives you so much power, and kind of like how kids like Minecraft because it gives them the tools to create. I liked coding because it gives you a very low level tool to create a vast number of things.
Interesting. Yeah. So you took classes, you have one-on-one teachers, did you in books you read? That's how you sort of were almost self-taught, it sounds like, in a way.
It really, when we first started off, my mom found tutors and camps to sign me up for. Right. And those were during summer, right during when I was on summertime, not school time. She would sign me up for these tutors. And then from then on, I was really interested in this. So I would go to Barnes and Nobles, my local Barnes and Nobles, just to go and buy the how-to for dummies books on like C++ and how I would use YouTube tutorials, and I would try and be self-taught. And then that led me down to, of course, what I am doing now, which is taking college for those.
For those classes. Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that, talk about, I guess, can you go to college then for coding? Is that now something that people major in?
Oh yeah, coding right now is I don't want to say, that is the field that you need to choose, but I think that it's a fantastic field, and I do believe I do have a slide for this if you want me
Yeah, yeah.
to show this. So let me go
Sure.
ahead and share my screen here.
See
Let's
if you can
see.
share the screen or, yeah.
So here is, I'm gonna go ahead and widen this up.
Okay.
You see everything all well?
Yes. Uh-huh.
All
Uh-huh.
right, so colleges are really, really, really supportive of coding. We call it computer science, we call it computer programming. And so here I have a list of colleges that I would recommend, say, if your student or if your kid is interested in coding and they really want to go and do coding as a career. I would say these are kind of my top six. Now that doesn't mean that these are the only ones, right? At the very bottom, there are plenty of like community colleges. There are plenty of state colleges that offer these fantastic um, classes in coding. But these ones I would say are my top picks, and I tried to geographically diversify them. So this is across the country. I want to make sure that if you see this, there's definitely a college near you where your kid could definitely go and take, say, coding for a college degree.
And do these schools, do they tend to specialize? Like maybe one school is the best for gaming and another one is the best for website design or app design, or do they just cover all topics when
Com-
you?
Computer science tends to cover that wide range of topics, but that's this great thing about when you go to college for, say, computer science. They give you all these options for these electorals, and with
Right.
those electorals you're going to be taking, say, web design, you're going to be taking, say, art design that you're going to be using and implementing in, say, if you want to be a video game designer, right? You're
Mhm.
going to need to know how to operate using things like Blender, like Maya, those 3D development programs that all the professionals use. And those are taught at colleges. So it's a really fantastic program that all these colleges offer.
Wow. Okay, that's great. So talk to me, I guess, a little bit more about the languages, because I always hear about the different computer languages. What are those languages, and like, does each have a purpose? I mean, how do you decide, like, or how does a child decide if they're going to take some classes, which language to even learn?
So yes, each and every single. So that's the great thing about coding as well. Well, it's a flaw and it's a strength that the coding languages are very, very diverse in what they can accomplish. We can see languages like JavaScript that are more often used in, say, like web development or on software applications, right? Or we can go and say look at applications like Python that are extremely versatile languages that are really, really easy to learn. And
Mhm.
so if I were to go about recommending, because all of these languages are good for what you want them to do, if I were to go down, I have this little list. If you want me to share as well, this little
Sure,
list I have.
sure, yeah.
So this right here, I have a slide for what language do I want. So
Right.
to go over right here, so C++ is probably, I would say it's the most powerful language in terms of memory management. If you're looking to make the fastest application out there, you would use C++. The only difficulty with C++ is that it's incredibly complex. So I do recommend it to some beginners that are capable of understanding it. I've had some amazing students that are just fresh with programming and they pick up C++ like it's nothing, and it amazes me. They're going to be amazing programmers when they grow up.
Uh-huh.
But C++ right now is popular for use in, say, developing operating systems. It's popular for use in video game development. It's used by Unreal Engine. It's used by Dice's Frostbite game engine. Oh, it's an amazing language. And then you've got languages like C Sharp that are really, really popular for the .NET framework. It's
Mhm.
the powerhouse, I would say, of Microsoft's .NET framework, which is just another coding framework, and it's very good for game and application design. And
Mhm.
then, of course, you have Java. And Java, everybody knows about Java. Java's been powerful for so long, and there's a reason for that, and that's because it's really, really easy to implement in your code, and it's a really, really good language to start out with as well. But of course, I would recommend Python because it is just that easy for beginners to pick up on. It teaches them the core concepts of coding, things like variables, things like classes and functions, and using those concepts are across the board. Every single coding language you're going to see has concepts like variables, classes, and functions. And so object-oriented programming is what we call it. It's very popular nowadays.
So that'd be a great place for kids to start, would be Python.
I would say Python. Python's a really good place for kids to start. They tend to like it.
They like, and then JavaScript and HTML, what are those? Are those for?
So HTML is sort of the industry standard for website development. You're going to see whenever somebody recommends, now I'm not a website developer, but whenever
Right.
you hear somebody say, I want to make a website, normally the first thing that they go to is HTML. And it can be used in conjunction with, say, something like JavaScript, which is good for both this client-side web development and also for making really good mobile applications. It's really good for that.
Okay. So these are the different languages. And if your child is a beginner, what would you recommend? Like which classes, where would they start? Where do you think would be the best place to start?
So depending on their age, if they're really, really new to programming, not even, the basic concepts of like problem solving, I would have to recommend our Scratch courses. We have courses in Scratch, which is sort of this block code, more of a visually aligned coding language where kids will drag and drop, say, segments of code into a browser, and they will program things using that. It's not difficult to understand, and it really does set up the younger kids for those coding concepts so that they could maybe evolve into, say, like Python or C++.
I see. And let's say you've got a child who's maybe not just a super beginner where, they've played with this a little bit. Where would you recommend? And they love games. Where would you recommend they start?
If your kid has a really good desire to do, say, video game development, and they already have some good experience in, say, coding, like they know about variables and functions, I would have to recommend either C++ or C#, just because you can take those two languages and you can use them really, really powerfully in game engines, which is what modern day AAA studios use to make their video games.
Oh, okay. So you would go right to those for kids who are really interested in gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Speaking of which, let me ask you this: what, in terms of like games, I know a lot of parents will complain that their kids just want to play video games. So, are there games that are actually good for kids in terms of just their thinking skills and their reasoning and their other, the way it might tie into school? Supporting them in school as well, and are there games that aren't so good? And how would you decide?
Yes, I actually do. I also have a slide for this if you want me to show that one. So I do have, and here is my little gaming education here. So a lot of parents do worry about the effects that video games have on their kids. And some of it is, understandable, right? You don't want a kid to become too distracted by video games that they don't focus on their education. And that's why I would recommend that you move kids away from certain, player versus player games that are really popular nowadays with little kids. You see like Fortnite, Call of Duty. I would keep kids just away from that because that's too distracting. It doesn't really promote that problem solving that you see in other games like Minecraft. But on say, we do have sources that prove that good video games, educational video games, do help develop problem-solving skills. And on top of that, will increase your attention span, improve decision-making and problem-solving capabilities in competitive environments, and improve memory and learning. And my personal recommendations, I do have two recommendations, of course. Everybody's heard of it. Minecraft is probably one of the most popular games in the world by now. You see it recommended all of the time. Kids that have learning disabilities are always recommended that they play Minecraft because Minecraft, throws forward this need to do advanced problem solving, counting, architecture. Kids learn development from it. It's just amazing for them. And then on a lower scale, I would recommend something like Stardew Valley, which is a very nice two-dimensional farming simulator that has kids doing, basically algebra, where they're calculating, say, how much they would make if they planted X amount of crops. And so I think those two games are just fantastic for kids you want to kind of trick them into learning with also having them have fun and not get tired of it.
Right. Tell me more about Minecraft. What's Minecraft all about? I mean, I don't know anything about it other than that kids are just obsessed with it. So maybe give me a little more and for parents who don't know as much about it.
So Minecraft has been around for a long time. I think it was released alpha around 2006. I remember playing it when I was 10 years old back in 2008. And it was the kind of the most popular, even when I was a kid, that we would go and join this world. You would create this completely procedurally generated world So it was random every time. Every time you made a new world and saved that world, it was a new experience. And you had these different biomes, things like snow, jungle, and desert, and you would try to survive in these harsh environments. And so there are, of course, two modes of Minecraft. You have creative, which is you cannot die, and it's 100% centered on your creating ability. It gives you unlimited access to all the blocks in the game. And so kids who really enjoy building and enjoy things like electrical engineering, things like that, that is actually a thing in Minecraft where you have access to things like redstone. Whereas survival is for kids who like a little bit of a harder, a little more of a challenge, and they want to try and problem solve their way into, hey, I need a house, I need to make a farm, I need to survive the onslaught of enemies that will spawn during the nighttime, I need to light up areas, and it's just really, really good for, say, kids that want to do problem solving.
I see. Okay. Oh, okay. Got it. Because kids just love that game. So, and I know that a lot of parents worry that their kids are spending too much time on it. But if they are spending a lot of time on it, you feel that it is helping them with their school subjects, right? I mean, that's what we were talking about earlier.
Right. I would say that it definitely is. It's going to help improve, especially like the little mathematical parts that kids really don't notice, where they have to start doing calculations, where it's like in Minecraft, for example, where you need, say, 2 sticks and 3 blocks of stone in order to make a pickaxe. Kids have to keep track of that. And so whenever they want to go, they're starting to, calculate these things. They cut down, say, 1 block of a tree, they convert it into wood planks, which they'll start remembering these random things where it's 1 block of tree will equal 4 wood planks, which can be turned into like 8 wood sticks. And just off that, they're just already doing a little bit of math in their head, and they're not even realizing it. It's just a great way.
So you do it and you don't even realize you're doing it, and you're having to think and you're having to do math but yet you think you're having fun. So
I would say they don't even think they're having fun. I think they're having fun and they just don't understand.
They don't realize they're learning while they're having fun. Okay, that's good. I like that. Okay, good. And I see we've got some questions, and I do want to get to some of your questions, but I wanted to also ask, when you said there's games that are not as good for kids, which are player against player games?
Yes, they're commonly referred to as PvP.
Okay, what player
versus player.
Okay, got it. Okay, so they're player versus player, and those are not, they don't get you thinking the way that these other games do.
I think that in a way they can get you thinking, but the problem is that going up against other players has this unsolvable question, right? Something that you really can't plan against. And kids that are really young can get really easily frustrated. They want to understand how to win in a game. And a lot of these player versus player game are played by adults, and it's hard for kids to compete against adults. It's just not fair. It's like going up against your kid in Monopoly, and they get upset when you win. So give them a game that is player versus environment, or PvE, and that'll give them a problem that they can solve. It's not too hard.
Okay, I got it. So well, and a couple of people are asking some questions about both games and language. So one question is, what do you think about Roblox compared to Minecraft?
So Roblox compared to Minecraft, that's like apples and oranges. They're so very different, and Roblox really cannot be summarized into this single game type, because as somebody who teaches Roblox game design for TestingMom, Roblox is more of a game engine in itself. You can create pretty much any game type using Roblox. So you will have game types that are player versus player in Roblox. You see them all the time. They try and copy Call of Duty, but then of course you have games in Roblox that are kind of what they're referred to as either obbies or obstacle courses, where you're presented with a problem and you need to quickly solve it to get to the next checkpoint. I like those types. And then of course you have tycoon types in Roblox, which is another popular game format where kids have to manage a money scheme as they try and build a business in Roblox. And that is more of what I would recommend. But Roblox is hard to narrow down. It is a very, very vast, universe of video game types.
Oh, I see. So that's a whole category of video game types within there.
So yeah, because Roblox is a company, right? So Roblox is a company, and they released Roblox Studio, which is their engine for the public to use. And when you publish a game, it's just published on Roblox.com. And so all these different game designers design all these different genres of games. So you just gotta watch. If you're worried about your kid in Roblox, you just gotta watch what they're playing.
Okay, and Minecraft is a game in and of itself.
It is
a
released by itself, developed back in 2006.
Okay, got it. And so in terms of kids, it really just depends what they're doing in Roblox versus maybe playing Minecraft. Like there may be some really great games or great things to do in Roblox for your child, but it just depends, I guess.
I think that a great thing about Roblox is it encourages kids to try out Roblox Studio, which in turn introduces them to the coding field. So in itself, if your kid's interested in game development, and then boom, look at that, I'm working with Roblox Studio, and now I'm doing math because I have to know how numbers work, and I have to know how coding works.
Do that. Okay. And all right, good. And then someone's asking, when we were talking about languages, what is the difference between Java and JavaScript?
That is the funniest thing. So I ask that all the time because I've programmed in Java, but I don't program in JavaScript. Now JavaScript is more net-based and with these like software applications, whereas Java by itself is just its own powerhouse. So they're different. It's hard to explain exactly how. Java I would liken more to languages like C++ because Java was based off of C++ back when it was released, I think in the 90s, versus JavaScript, which obviously has the name of Java, but it works more on the net, less on the application side.
Got it. Okay, got it. So, well, tell me, when you teach classes, tell me about the classes you teach kids and your experience with the kids in your classes. Like, what has it been like? Have you mostly been doing beginner classes, intermediate classes? Tell us a little bit about what your experience has been with the kids you teach online and how well do they learn it online?
I feel like they pick it up really easily online, especially if parents sign them on with the same computer that they're working with. A big component of Zoom and working in the Zoom environment is that kids can share their screen, which just makes it so much easier for, say, a kid has a programming problem and goes, Instructor Devon, why is this not working? And then I'll go, oh, you share your screen. And then I can easily point it out and say, oh, you forgot a semicolon, which is something that's required in, say, languages like C++, Java, C#. But they pick things up really easily. It always surprises me how, as long as they have that urge to learn and they have that desire to, say, has something powering it, like an interest in games or an interest in development, they learn just like that. It's a wonderful thing to see.
Interesting. So and do you have kids of all different ages and all different skill levels, or how does that, like in one class, it's all kids at about the same skill level?
Yeah, so it's I do have kids that will kind of, excel above and beyond, get things immediately, but I don't really need to worry about that because I always take the rate of one of my slowest learners. I always try and make sure that everybody understands what's going on before we continue. And the age range typically varies from, say, 7 as my youngest to I've had a 13-year-old as my oldest taking my C++ course, which was absolutely enjoyable to teach.
Okay. So, and so when you teach, are you teaching the language? Are you teaching games? I mean, what are some of the topics that you're teaching with the kids?
So when I teach, so I teach quite a few things with TestingMom, but I teach, say, like language-wise, C++, Python, Java, and C#. And then, of course, I teach Lua, but that goes with Roblox design. And Roblox design is more than just, say, learning Lua. Roblox design has to go with how do you work in the Roblox Studio engine, which comes into things like art design and sound design and things like that. And then, of course, with C#, I like to teach it in conjunction with my Unity engine classes. And the Unity engine classes is the same way as Roblox Studio, where it's a whole engine. I teach the kids how to use the entire engine and how they can make their own video games. But with C++, or Java or Python, I try and rope in an interest in video games as I teach them the important syntaxes of those languages. So I will say, so variables are things that we can use, right, store data in, things like our health, right? Our health is a variable in any video game that we play. So let's try and make a health variable and subtract it by a certain amount. And then I'll try and relate that. But I mostly go for, if it's a language class, I just teach them the language.
Okay. So, so tell me, I guess, the way you describe it, it sort of sounds like if you learn coding, you're learning to do things that sort of encompass lots of different things like art and design, math, thinking and reasoning. Am I right? I mean, that's the way you're describing it. Yeah.
For sure. That is at its very core, coding is 100% like a mathematical puzzle that you have to solve. If you want to get something done, you have to understand how to control your variables and how we manipulate memory and move it around. That in itself is going to help your child exceed at things like algebra, because algebra is nothing but controlling variables, right? But then when you get into those higher levels of understanding, things like, do I want to make a video game with this, right? Video games are complex things. They have more than just code behind them. They have art teams that work with them. They have music teams that work with them. So kids that have that interest, and that's what caused me to go and take, say, an interest in music theory, which I had to go and take just so I could learn how to add, say, good sound into the games that I like to develop.
I see. Okay. And story, it's almost like, because some of these are stories, right? So
that would be English, right? That's writing.
Yeah,
that's totally writing.
Yes. Right. And that's part of it. Yeah. I mean, that's part of what you're creating. So that's amazing. Okay. So someone is asking, do you recommend that a student stay with one programming language to begin with? And if so, like how long should they stick with that before they try to take on another? And do you recommend Minecraft education?
Now, I'm not very well versed in Minecraft education. I do teach a Minecraft course, but I hear that Minecraft education is its own application that is Minecraft, but more geared towards the educational values. If it is shown to work, then I would totally recommend it. As for working and staying with one programming language, for certain, you would definitely want to start your kid off with an easy programming language, something like Scratch or Python. And then as soon as they grasp, I would say, the concepts behind object-oriented programming, I think is a good time to switch over, because object-oriented programming is sort of the fundamentals of how most people go about programming today. And so I would say they'll learn in Python, and this is going to be variables. They'll learn about functions. They'll learn about if statements, while loops, for loops, and then they'll learn about classes and class definitions. After that, I think that's a really good time if they want to switch over to a different language. Once they understand those, they'll be mentioned in other coding languages. You'll start C++, and the C++ instructor, hey, that's me, will say something like, oh, we have if statements that we have to check variables to see if they're equivalent to other values. And then they'll go, oh, that's something that I did in Python. So it clicks very well.
Okay. So start with Scratch and Python, perhaps. And then when you've kind of learned about some of those basics, then you can move into some of the little bit more advanced or a little bit more difficult languages. Okay, that makes sense. And then tell me, like, if you like careers, I guess is, I mean, I always hear that there's good careers in coding or programming. Talk about some of the different careers and how well they pay, and for kids. My son just got out of college, so I realize, that it's important to have a career that pays the rent. So
that's one of the great things about coding. So the benefit to investing in, say, future programmers is that there's this financial security behind it. The technological field is completely booming right now. It's obvious to hirers that technology is the future. Everybody wants to see Tron or any other technological movie. So we have these coding jobs that have these consistently high salaries, and those salaries they do vary based on those specific positions according to the BLS. I do have sources here, so if you would like, I could share some of these jobs I have compiled. Let's see here. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
All right. So we see this?
Yes.
So career options, right? So we have software application developer. This is where I was talking to things like Java and JavaScript. Also Python, responsible for creating and enhancing applications for cell phones, tablets, and other mobile devices. This is really popular right now. And this might just be the market, but the median salary is $105,590. That is an amazing salary for a job. So then we have things like, say, computer system engineer. And computer system engineers are responsible for identifying solutions to complex application problems, system administration issues, or network concerns. You'll see more of C++ in this region, although people nowadays, companies do like to put out job applications for Python. And then your median salary, again, 88,550. We're going to see constantly and very consistently that the median is going to be over 50,000, which is a really good, for a career, the median is over 50,000. That's a really good sign. Then we've got web developer. Again, like we were talking about how JavaScript and HTML, that is something that people like to do with websites. Java is good with implementing for websites, though not exactly for the design of the website. But creating working websites based off a request made by client. This one is a little more than this. I like to give web developers a little more credit than they do, just because to work with a client and have them specify their needs for web development is a big thing. And so this requires a lot of social skills. And that's something that programmers are very famously not that great with. So props to web developers. Then we have database administrators. That would require securing, organizing, and troubleshooting storage for large amounts of information for companies online. This is something that I really want to get into, so I'm going to have to take some college classes on this because I'm interested in SQL. And this is how we manage our data and how it's stored in, say, servers like the cloud. So then, of course, we have things that I'm more interested in, which is computer programming. So writing programs and rewriting programs until they are free of errors, using workflow charts and coding formulas until the desired information is produced. That would be using languages such as C#. That's my language.
It's your language, okay.
So median salary being 86,000, again, a fantastic option. And the last one that I have here, of course, is the video game designer. We do have a lower salary, but still over 50,000, so it's really good. Code programs on various platforms to create playable games. Designers work with a flowchart when creating a game storyboard. May specialize in certain components such as environment, combat, sound. Again, game development has this vast, requirement. So things like working with programming sound into the game, working with programming environmental factors into the game. Combat by itself is a huge thing. So languages like Microsoft C# and C++ are the powerhouses of video game design.
Interesting. Okay. Well, there's so many different careers that you could have. Absolutely. I'm thinking about. I wanted to think about. I was going to look at some of the different classes that we have, and let me share my screen for a minute because I wanted to just. Maybe have you comment on some of these different classes that we do. Let's see. So, sorry, let me get this down there so I can see this. Okay, so we've got snap circuits. And what are, do you know about all of these? If you don't know about all of these, I'm just curious, maybe tell me more about what some of these are. Like, obviously here's Minecraft for intermediate Minecraft, and some of the others, YouTube gaming workshop, computer literacy, intermediate Scratch. Is snap circuits, this is more in robotics, right?
Well, yeah, that's electrical engineering. A lot of it comes down to, again, programming. You have to know programming to do robotics engineering. So
yeah, exactly. And then it looks like wherever your child is, there's something for you. An intro to Minecraft for beginners, Python, and these are project-based program classes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So we try and have a goal by the end of the class. So things like code a funny Mad Lib story. If anybody knows what Mad Libs is, you insert, say, noun, verb, adjective. We would program that into, say, a command prompt interface and have kids design their own story. So big focus on writing on that one.
Yeah, it is, exactly, right. And but kids want to do it because it's on the computer. And then here's the intro to Roblox Studio. And then what is the role-playing game here?
So an RPG, a role-playing game, is a game where you are supposed to get into character. It helps immersion with certain, video games where you're playing not as yourself in the game, but you're playing as, say, a character. Like in Legend of Zelda, you play as Link. So this would probably help just with creativity. I think that creativity is a big element in RPG design.
Interesting. Okay. And then what is this? This is Python code. See, I'm the mom who doesn't know what all these things are.
So this one's actually really cool. This is making, I would imagine when they say Brick Breaker, this is the one of those mobile games, those software applications I was talking about, where you say shoot a ball off and it hits a brick and it destroys it. It's one of those older games, one of the first games that were released, kind of like Pong, but instead of playing against another paddle, you're playing against an environment.
Got it. So there's so many opportunities, so many different ones. And here's your basic Python programming, right? And then another one, which is a project. So I see a funny Mother's Day Mad Lib poem. So that's kind of a fun thing for Mother's Day that kids can get into. So let's see, creating art with JavaScript. So JavaScript is used for design and art.
It can be used for, these visual, it's a front end design type of programming language. So what people see is really important because when you're interacting with something, it's important that you see something really pretty. And so JavaScript is really good for that.
All right, so you can just go on TestingMom and look for some of the different classes for those of you who are interested. And then the other thing I know that that we have now, the newest thing is our Coding Academy, which is, I think, a really good deal. But tell me more about how that works. Like how, if you have someone who's really interested in learning more about coding, how is that working out?
So this is working out really well. This is probably one of the best deals that we offer. The $99 a month is absolutely killer in the field of, say, tutoring code. You'll have these other camps and tutor sites that'll try and, charge you probably upwards of $100 to $200 per week that you're trying to take these coding lessons. But then you have this right here, which is $99 a month. It's a really, really good deal, and you get unlimited classes. And so just this by itself, I had a student. I won't name him. I'll call him Johnny. Johnny was taking all of my C++ classes, and he told me that the reason why he was signing up for all of my classes, my C++, my C# classes, was because he was signed up for the $99 per month class. And he actually got to the point where he had finished all of my beginner classes that I'd offer, and I didn't yet have an intermediate class planned. I didn't submit, the paperwork required to start up the intermediate C++ class. And so he bothered me back and forth. He said he wanted an intermediate C++ class. And so thanks to him, I ended up submitting paperwork and getting an intermediate C++ class started. And he's taking that as well. And I'm sure he'll be bothering me about taking an advanced C++ class. It'll be great.
That's great. He sounds like he really loves coding. Then.
He's a wonderful student. He's just the type of student that I love to have.
Oh, that's wonderful. So kids can join this and pick maybe a path and then go down that path as far as they want to take it. Essentially, it sounds like.
Exactly. And if they find a programmer like myself that they happen to, connect with, they can definitely go and go down all of the classes that instructor has to offer.
Okay, that's great. So this is definitely a good deal. And so for those of you whose kids are really, really, getting into this is something to look into. You could just go to testingmom.com /coding-academy. So that'll get you there, or just Google it and you'll find it, or call us. Here's our number. We'll get you set up. But it's a good way. It's a good way to give kids a lot of opportunity to really become serious coders. Okay, so that's very interesting. I'm trying to think if I have any more questions. If anybody parents, if any of you have any questions, just feel free, just put your question in the chat box. I want to make sure everybody gets their questions answered. It's interesting. I wonder how young you can be how young can we introduce concepts for coding into a child's life? Because I was even thinking kids as young as even kindergarten can start learning some of these basic concepts that will lead them into the kind of thinking they need to do for coding. Am I right? Or
you're certainly right. And I think that I was talking to a coworker who recommended that I mentioned this, but there was this this more physical, it wasn't actually an application online, but it was like a physical board game that used a mouse that had a little camera on the bottom of it, and the mouse would run across, and whenever they came across, say, a command that you would lay down, the mouse would respond to it, and your goal was to get the mouse to the very end of, say, this cavern. And I think that shows, kids at a very young age can be sort of, introduced to coding concepts, and it will very much inspire them to take it up later on in their lives.
Interesting. It just seems like it's a fun way for kids to learn and to to really challenge their minds, and it is something kids are naturally interested in. So it's always it's so helpful if you can find something that kids are naturally interested in, and then support them in pursuing it more, and getting them to just dive in, kind of like your mother did with you when you were younger. It can take you on a whole career journey, ultimately.
I have to 100% give my mom props. I think that if she hadn't sent me down this path, who knows what would have happened. I really do love the coding field, and I do love teaching in the coding field. It's an amazing blessing.
Yeah, that sounds like it. It sounds like you really love it. And I know your students really like working with you. You get great reviews. Everybody loves working with you. So, and I appreciate your coming on tonight and just talking about it and answering parents' questions. Let's see. I just want to see if there's any additional questions. Let's see. Oh, here is another question. I just want to throw this one out. Let's see, for like languages that aren't readily used for game design, like Python, are there projects or assignments kids are asked to code to help them get started on coding?
I'm actually so glad that you asked that, because I just happened to have taken it was about 3 years ago, I took a college class for introduction to Python just so I could get some, more professional experience on it. And one of the first things that they had us do was they had us make a clock. So if you can, just that introduction of that problem, just, hey, try what they gave us the tools. They said, this is how you do math. This is how you use these certain libraries. What we want you to do is we want you to make a clock that counts down from a certain number that not the player. So I always call the person who opens the application the player, a video game terminology, but the user can input a time and it will count down from that time. So that would definitely be something I would recommend if you want them to get started on something less video game-y.
Okay, and I know we must do that in our Python classes to keep them interesting. Can grown-ups take these classes? I really feel like I've missed this whole area of education in my education. That maybe I need to take some of these coding classes too, to learn really what you guys, what you're doing, and how I can how I can how I can create things online. I would really love to know how to do that. I always depend on others to do that for me.
Coding is certainly enjoyable, regardless, any age. Coding is super fun.
Yeah. Okay, good. So moms and dads, you can do it too. But this, we tend to have kids in our Testing Mom classes, but you can do it too. And we hope you'll think about sending your kids to some of our classes if they're interested in this, and even consider the coding academy. So, Devon, thank you for helping tonight, being here. You've been so informative. I've learned a lot.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So good luck with all the classes that you're doing for us. We really appreciate it. And moms and dads, check them out. If this is something your child would enjoy, maybe get them started with some of our coding classes, depending on what interests them the most, whether it's game design, or maybe they want to design websites someday, who knows? It looks like, we have it all. And the moms and dads are telling you good luck and thank you. And I really appreciate everything. You were very helpful tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Devon. And thanks to your mom for getting you into this. See,
thanks, Mom.
It's up to us to get our kids into these things. So there you go. Okay. Thanks, Devon, and good night. Good night, everybody.